In a world where information seems to travel at the speed of light and traffic at a snail's pace, where the agenda of those at the helm doesn't always reflect the pressures on the streets, where the rubber hits the road, where there's queue of issues needing to be interrogated in the name of speaking truth to power.
Welcome to a place at the table,
where we set the agenda,
table the issues that matter to you,
and invite you to take a seat at the table.
Welcome to a place at the table. You've heard that charity begins at home, right? Yet, for Africa, it's been the other way around. That is, until recently. I'm asking, do recent developments signal a liberation day for America or Africa?
Yinka, for now, you could say that the jury is out on that one. However, my advocacy may shed some light on things along the coast of West Africa. I'll be pointing to hope rising on the continent of Africa, and specifically from the Republic of Benin.
It helps to look outwards when inspiration is lacking within. It also helps to be informed if we are to be change agents rather than victim of change. Gen Zs, I'm still talking to you. Yo, Kinsley, what's going on?
Interesting, right? I am saying that inspiration can still be found within. We just have to dig deeper and work on our mindset. I am calling it mindset rehabilitation.
I don't want to burst your bubble, Kinsley, but what happens when the charity Yinka spoke of is sorely lacking at home? I'll be asking, who do you turn to when your own people turn kidnappers and predators?
We come with questions and answers, problems and solutions. Let's see what you make of it. They called it Liberation Day, April 2nd, 2025. The day America imposed tariffs ranging from 10 to 50% on all its trading partners to drive manufacturing back to the US. Now, the purpose of this advocacy is not to point out the absurdity of imposing tariffs on 180 countries when you have trade surpluses with over 123 of them, or to draw attention to the breach of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which provides eligible African countries with duty-free access to the US market for over 1,800 products. It is rather to review the impact on Nigeria and Africa to see the bigger picture. Yes, Nigeria exports goods worth 5.7 billion to the US, 92% of which is oil and gas. The implication of the imposition of a 14% tariffs on goods from Nigeria is a reduction in revenue from crude, which is currently our main source of foreign exchange earnings. But that's not the whole story. In 2004, total trade in goods between the US and Nigeria was 17.8 billion, as against 9.8 billion in 2024. Compare this with China. In 2004, total trade was 1.86 billion, as against $20 billion in 2024. Meaning in 20 years, trade with China grew by 975%, while trade with the US dropped by 44%. The same can be seen all over Africa. In 2004, total Africa trade with the US was $45.6 billion, as against $30 billion with China. In 2024, that figure jumped to 71.6 billion with the US and 295.5 billion with China. When you consider that China is, as we speak, implementing its own version of AGOA with zero tariffs for the least developed countries, it's hard to see why this trajectory of trade will not continue to grow to offset the losses with the US. Whether this was by luck or by design, Africa, with the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, is in a unique position to take advantage of this situation to not only increase trade within Africa, but to negotiate trade deals with new trade alliances that would emerge. Now, today we hear that Trump has paused these tariffs, but we should not be distracted. Free trade must be more than just a buzzword.
So I love this because sometimes It's called blessing in disguise. I'm going to try and throw some numbers like Yinka today. First of all, I think we have this internal victim mentality, Africans in general. And it comes from slavery, and we have this mindset that we are lesser than the West. And that has turned a lot of things that we do, especially when it comes to internal trade. Now, in Africa alone, internal trade is about 15% in Africa. Now, other parts of the world, you have Asia. Asia is about 60%. Europe is about 70% internally. And then you have North America at about 40%. Why is it that with 1.5 billion people in Africa, projected to be about 2.5 billion, which is a massive market, we don't think that we can sell to each other? I was in Berlin last year for a conference, and this conference was about the Ministry of Education from about 7 or 8 African countries. The idea was to come and pitch to the German government to come and invest in the different African countries. So they are looking at your workforce, they are looking at your educational system to see if you have the capacity for their kind of business. So everybody was there to pitch. And they invited me. I did not understand why they invited me to come and be a keynote speaker until I was on stage. And then when I was there, I had my whole speech prepared, and I was talking about the things that we were doing in Africa and all of that. And at the end, I said, we're all here to pitch to the German government and to all these companies. But the problem is, out of all the 7 ministers of education that we have here, how many of you talk to each other? None. You guys probably meet each other for the first time. I am here to pitch a solution that we created in Nigeria that even the German government are like, this is amazing, I want to bring this here. How many of you know about it? None. So the moment we realize that the solution, I mean, how did they say it? Which you look for Sokoto, live for your Sokoto, that's where the change will begin. We need to understand that we have a market. We're 1.5 billion people that eat food, wear clothes, drive cars, use cell phones. We should start producing and selling to each other and stop making these guys make us feel like we're nothing.
But I also think that we should move away, still going back to what Bryce said, from that victim and corrupt mentality and begin to make these decisions from a place of strength, from a place of understanding, or not even understanding, having vision first, and then understanding what that vision looks like in terms of interpreting it, and then it begins to make sense. Because if we begin to still go into these deals and agreements, just the same format we've had with the US again, then we're going to miss the very opportunity we have now to make a change and get something that is tangible for them, even them as a leader. Let's seize the opportunity.
After it's already there. I mean, the Africa free...
the last time we talked about it, people said it would take 10 years before it will... Why is it taking that long?
Well, then, talking about free trade, not every country will benefit. And why do I say so? If some countries don't work on their... competitiveness, if they don't align with trade policies, if, most importantly, they don't work on infrastructure, then you will definitely lose out. Sadly, it feels like we, our country, it's on that side of losing out because we still have a lot of deficit in terms of infrastructure. So I do agree with you. Africa, ourselves, we can actually do this. We can push forward.
I'll come to Africa and put what's happening in perspective. Senegal has decided that they don't want to continue with the CFA, which is their currency. They want to find an alternative to that. Niger has just dumped French as its national language. They have picked Hausa as their language in Niger Republic. A lot is happening in Africa slowly, but it's showing that Africa is beginning to see that unless we band together and change the way things used to be, we cannot have that leadership, that independence that we want, and we cannot have the kind of quality of life that we need. To AfCFTA, I like that there is this agreement and the continent is working at it. What I would love the continent to work at, which will also impact on trade, is transportation system in Africa. There is no amount of trading that you will propose to do without a good network of transportation, it's a joke.
The fact that if I want to go to Ghana right now, I have to change my money to dollar just to go and change it in to cedis.
Which was what I did when I went to Ghana.
Which is ridiculous, right? You go around Europe, you spend the same kind of currency. So I think it actually even begins with the simple things. Do we have one general currency? And then, like Kingsley said, infrastructure. Because if you're going to trade, you need to be able to move from one place. How many? Do we have good roads that connect these countries? Even from here, from Lagos to Cotonou, it's almost impossible.
Whatever you're doing, if it's isolated, then you still have the unity problem. You can't come together to do anything in infrastructure. So there has to be unity of vision and unity of knowing that we are moving forward. Until they have it, I don't know. I
feel like Africa is very divided. Like we don't like each other. We hate each other.
Nigeria,
even within Nigeria, we don't like each other in this country. So.
The world investment points to the fact that value first has to be put in for there to be a withdrawal. There can be no harvest without the time of sowing.
Right, Yinka, and to invest in something, we would first have to recognize the intrinsic worth of it. And Africa must begin to recognize the jewel that it is, pure and simple. Last weekend, I visited Cotonou, the commercial capital of the Republic of Benin, Nigeria's French-speaking and closest neighbor. If the phrase, no hurry in life, was a country, it should be Republic of Benin. The citizens are laid back and life there is unhurried. From Porto Novo, the former administrative capital, to the commercial capital, an atmosphere of contentment that is visible on the faces of the citizens pervades. Coming from bustling Lagos, it was a major difference that instantly regulated my pace to a slower, more rhythmic one. The doubting Thomas that I was, I Googled the suicide rate of the country. To be sure, I read that contentment right. It is 7.8% per 100,000 populations, against Nigeria's 17.3 per 100,000 populations. And Nigeria's is higher than the global average of 10.5 and the African average of 12% per 100,000. Benin is one of the poorest countries in Africa. I find it paradoxical that their currency is better than Nigeria's. 20,000 naira became 7,500 sefa in my hands. Three things are outstanding about Benin Republic to me: discipline in transportation system, punctuality, and a love for culture. There is a parallel mini road for motorcycles that prevented them from wrestling the space with cars, and a walkway for pedestrians to dignify walking. Speeding is an offense in the country, just as not wearing helmets on keke, their own Okada. The speed limit in Benin Republic is an unusual 60 km per hour. Compliance with use of helmets for motorcycle riders in Benin was 98%. Like my guide, citizens carried one on them, while riders had spares for passengers. Travel journalist Belua Officer says the 940 meters graffiti wall in Cotonou is the longest in Africa. And for me, seeing the 30-meter Agogie warrior statue was the most memorable. Remember the movie Woman King? It's an authentic story of Dahomey Kingdom's military women. I was thrilled endlessly. In conclusion, there's a trust deficit in Nigeria. While the Benin part of the journey was stressless, the Nigerian side on our return journey was the opposite. There were just too many checkpoints from different uniformed personnel for an international route.
All right, so lovely monologue. I love the way you try to tell the story and calibrate it in a way to make us try to imagine ourselves in that environment. And I can imagine myself there, because typically, countries or places where you have the French culture, the French influence, there's a bit of emphasis on, you said laid back, but it's not really laid back. It's just the pace of them doing things. They're a bit relaxed. I mean, a Frenchman will go for lunch for 2 hours, and he'll take his time. He's not going to rush it. And I think that that's also part of what you see. What interests me is that the Benin Republic, historically, it's used to be the Dahomey kingdom.
Kingdom, yes.
You know, the Dahomey kingdom at that time extended even far to the southwest of Nigeria. And I think the language they speak now is the Fon. But
that's the major language, but they also speak Yoruba.
But they also speak
four major languages.
They speak Yoruba,
yes.
you know, because when you see the Yoruba language goes from Nigeria to Benin to Togo
yes.
and all that. So there's in a way, historically, when you link them, it's like this could be Nigerians also, you know. And then you actually saw the question: why are they able to regulate themselves over there in terms of how they, you know, behave and, you know, and all that? Why can't we do it here? Why can't we do the same things that, you know, are they not the same Africans or the same people who are culturally linked? That's what makes you realize that our issues with our people here is not the government.
It's we the people, really.
It's not cultural. It's just we decided to be who we are today. And I say that also in perspective. I've said it here before that I saw this country when it was functional. Right? I used to go to school in the late 70s, okay, on the Lagos Island itself, Broad Street. That was where my school, my nursery school was, okay? And I used to, at that time, as young as I was, I would take a bus from Tinubu Square down to Festac, and we will queue. We knew the name of the bus, the number, we knew the time, we will queue. And all that things, there was a point in this country where things were regulated, where people behaved. But there was just a time when people just said it doesn't matter, okay? It was a decision that we took. We could say that it was driven by the military. You could say that it was driven by the fact that people just didn't see the need to do it, but it was a decision we took. And it comes back to what I always say, can you change Nigeria without changing the Nigerian?
Just to continue from where Inka stopped, right? We always, I mean, you said we just decided to be this way. I don't think we decided to be this way. I think there's always a foundation to everything. I think there probably was a time where everything was coordinated until somebody says, or there was a structure that came up where people prioritize themselves over the collective. So I believe that the reason why we're where we are right now is because at some point in history, somebody decided to say, you know what, I don't care about the status quo. I don't care about the structure. I'm going to do my way because I want. And once somebody starts that, everybody else feels left behind and they want to catch up. And that is the foundation of speed for us. Like, I got to catch up. I've been to Benin Republic, and I mean, the Builders show that we did recently, we had a team from Benin Republic. And there was just something extra, and Kisley was there, so he saw it. There's something extraordinary about these guys. From the first task, right, it had to do with speed. Like everybody that guessed to the, it was called relay of precision. So you move all the different materials to the end, they lost. The second task was foundation laying. You would literally observe this guy. So it's 4 levels of foundation. Everybody else was doing their own. Togo, Nigeria, you see Nigeria, you know what Nigeria is. But you see Benin Republic, they did 3. They couldn't finish it. They did 3 out of 4. Everybody else finished. They won because it was precise.
That's it.
Every other stage, detailed. Every other stage was like that. Then it got to, and they won every stage outside the one that had to do with speed.
Right.
And they now got to the semi-finals where there were just 3 teams left, and whoever wins this competition goes to the finals. Now it was about speed. It was electrical installation. Whoever light comes on first. Guess who won that round?
Nigeria.
Nigeria lost every round. Nigeria lost every round. That was the only round Nigeria won. Because before you go, give me light, boom, there was light. Guess who lost that round? Benin Republic.
Right.
And that's how they were qualified to go to the finals, because they were taking their time. They were placing their, and just plug wire, light came on. So but when you look at the excellence of everything else that they did, it was perfect.
Nika said something which was quite interesting to me. You said you saw the country when it was functional. That's so powerful, honestly, because it takes you back to the book. There was a country.
Yeah.
You know. So the question now is, where did we get it wrong as a country, and why can't we come together to fix it? Because the truth is, all these people out there trying to say they're going to give us aid, give us this, they're not there to help us fix our country. We as Nigerians have to fix our country ourselves. We have to come together to fix our country ourselves. Then talking about being laid back, you find out that if you go to a lot of African countries, a hell lot of them are laid back.
Yep.
That's right.
And even when you walk, they're like, why are you walking so fast? Here in Nigeria, the factories you have or the supermarkets you have, they're owned by Nigerians. But in those countries, you find out that a lot of all those businesses aren't owned by the locals. So in some form, they are still kind of held back.
He has responded to what I was going to say in terms of what you said. I don't think that is the people. I always make that reference to when we had Governor Fashola in Lagos and how he was able to change certain cultures because he was able to put in systems and consequences to be able to make that happen. Also, I don't know why I've not visited Benin, to be honest, but most of the African countries I've visited, yes, they can be very laid back. Even in the corporate setting, it's just Nigerians will become frustrated dealing with people in that space. But let's also not forget that Nigeria is not Lagos. There are parts of Nigeria you will go to and you'll be wondering, can't you move?
That one, Disha.
I remember my own home state where you travel and then you're about to enter a bus. The bus will park well. The people in the bus will wait. The person coming to enter will stroll, enter, sit well. The driver will even ask you, are you okay before they move? And that is how they are in those places. This is Abia State. You can be relaxed, you can be laid back, but you need to understand where speed is also required, where things has to be instant and things has to be done. Maybe that is also why we cannot have that unity. Okay, let me not say we cannot have. Bryce says never say never. Maybe that is why it will take a long time for us to have that unity we want as Africans to be able to then stand shoulder to shoulder with the Western power. Right. Because our culture is very different.
Our culture is very different indeed. I mean, sometimes the grass is greener because where we have neglected our own, others are watering and tending to theirs. Hopefully, Nigeria will start tending to.
Therefore, I say, let's invest in knowledge and developing our human resources so that we no longer neglect but nurture what belongs to us. Last time, we unpacked the basics. Today, we dive into the one arm of government that impacts your life daily, but gets the least attention. The legislature. Your senator or House of Rep members play a bigger role in your future than you think. They make the laws, approve the budgets, influence education, infrastructure, even how much your business is taxed. They can check the president, but that's only if they're doing their jobs. Sadly, many aren't. And worse, some have been there for decades, more than 2 decades. Nicholas Mutu has been in the House of Reps since 1999. That's 26 years. Ahmed Lawan, the former Senate president, has also been there since 1999, 26 years. Eyinaya Abaribe has been a senator for 18 years. And there's more. The question is, what have they done to stay that long? What bills have they sponsored? What change have they brought to their constituency? If we don't ask, we'll keep re-electing names without records. When most people go to the polling booth, they vote for president, and then they click the same party all the way down without knowing a single name or what the person stands for. That's how the same faces keep returning. No questions, no accountability. In 2027, we must change how we vote. Not just at the top, but especially, most especially, the 109 senators, the 360 reps, and the thousands of state assemblies. But this is also a message for INEC, or to INEC. First, you want the photos of candidates on the ballot box. So people vote for individuals, not just parties. Second, it's time for term limits. If governors and presidents serve for 8 years, lawmakers should do the same. The Senate isn't a retirement home. Democracy needs fresh faces, fresh eyes, fresh energy, and fresh thinking. It's time to make the legislature work for the people again. Gen Zs, to all my people out there, this is our challenge to you. I know you people are doing your 30 days challenge, but this is a new challenge. Know your reps. Watch their vote and demand better, because the people you ignore at those ballot boxes are the ones writing the rules that shape your future.
I remember that Yinka has, raised this issue of performance of legislators here at the table.
Yeah.
I think about twice even. And yes, I know that we borrowed this system of government from the US. So we have long-serving senators or legislators in the US as well. But the crux, which is what you're amplifying, is what is their performance like here in Nigeria, and why do they deserve to be there endlessly? And I love your recommendation that INEC, moving forward, should let us see the faces of the people we're voting for. It shouldn't be automatic that you just see broom, then you vote everybody under the broom, or you see umbrella and you do the same. We should begin to know who exactly we are voting for. Remember, I said that we have young people in the legislature as well. We don't even know them, and some of them are long-serving as well. So what is the contribution they're making as young people in the legislature? And I'm glad that you used some names there. I mentioned some names there, because if we do not begin to name and shame, we're not going anywhere. So kudos to you. I look forward to seeing the challenge.
So we need to insist, and in fact that was the first thing I wrote down there, that we need to insist that voting records, that they vote electronically, so that we can compute the voting record.
How do we insist?
What do you stand? Well,
that's a good question.
The media, we begin to ask for it.
We do it as a campaign.
Yeah.
We do it as a massive campaign to say that, look, we must, the nays and the yeas should no longer have it.
The eyes.
That's a good one. I should put that on the sweat.
We want to know, we want to put a name behind
That's a good one.
Yeah.
all right, clearly, and so that we can then know what you stand for and hold you, responsible and accountable for that. Now, there's a bill currently in the National Assembly which has passed the second reading for the amendment of the Electoral Act for all the elections to be done on the same day. That is the presidential, the governorship, the National Assembly as well. Now that bill is it's just past second reading, so which means it will go to public hearing very soon. We need to engage the Gen Zs and the young people in this conversation as well. Does this make sense? We need to look at it, because when you're saying that, okay, pictures should be on the ballot, if that bill goes through and all the elections, all the offices are on the ballot paper will be huge. Bulky.
Yeah.
The question is, do you think that people would have the patience and agency or industry to be able to think, to say, okay, I want this, I don't want that, I want this? It might be overwhelming, but we have to look at it and say, what does really make sense.
Well, Rika, sorry, before you go ahead.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming for what, a couple of minutes? Or do we have to do something that can be overwhelming for the next 4 years?
No,
or for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years?
If you have all of them being voted for on the same
It's overwhelming,
day,
but it's important that we have to go through that process, because what has happened over time is this is what we're experiencing for 26, 20, 30, 40 years, because everybody's like, oh, let's just do something quick. That is the most important part of our entire life.
Yeah, but Jaja, he's referring to having all the elections done in one day. That is completely overwhelming. That's if I'm right. That's completely overwhelming. Why do I say so? Do we have the security agencies to cover that kind of election? I mean, you find out that if you have the general election, the presidency, which is done nationwide. If you have the president on a particular day, you find out that the security agencies are overwhelmed. Most of them can't start that long. You find out you're standing from 6 a.m. to the morning to like 12 a.m. in the midnight. That's super overwhelming. Even,
It's
I
not
mean,
practicable.
Because the election is one day, why are we having an election one day? Why can't we extend it? Why can't we make it a whole week?
That's the idea. Why can't we do it like it is done elsewhere in the world? Walk in.
You see, you can have pre-election ahead of time, and then the election day. That's structure. You have 200 million people.
So just to add to that again, you know, we've done advocacy here where we advocated for elections to be for election month and not election day.
Thank you.
That we can have election for an entire month. We can use ballots. We can use the ballot system, the mailing ballots. We can diaspora voting.
But the issue with this is corruption. If you say people do mail voting, would it be transparent enough? Same for diaspora voting. Same for 1 month long voting. Yeah.
So the 1 month long voting doesn't exactly negate what they're trying to do, which is that we don't have a situation whereby we are done with governorship and whatever, and then we now say today is for presidency. Like, if we're doing 1 month, let's know if I go to vote today, I'm voting for every yes. So it could take a week, it could take maybe not 1 month, but it could take a week and all that, because if you do 1 month, Nigeria is a wonderful country. But quickly, I definitely agree that there should be terms limits. I don't understand why that place is fast becoming, it has already, but it's getting to a point where everybody you will see there will be ex-governors, and that's their retirement home. And we need to find a way to stop that. Also, I knew that, I definitely knew that somebody was going to mention US in this conversation based on how,
because
right?
that's what we borrowed
I
the
agree,
presidential
but
system
I'm also
from.
a very big fan of, yes, copying things that work. However, when you bring it, you culturalize it and also make it better. If the fact that they do it, that doesn't mean we have to do it exactly how they do it. How is it going to work in our own case? Because right there, I know that, I mean, politics is politics, politicians are interesting people, but they still have a bit of shame. They know how to hold themselves accountable to a large extent. Here, in the last 2 years, I'm not sure I'm seeing anything called shame.
I mean, Nancy going to make a
You
point.
see, in terms of terms limit, I'm a bit skeptical about it. And the reason why I say this is, say you get into leadership position, senator, one of those positions, and you bring out a policy. The question now is, how long does it take for the policy to sit in? First thing first. How long does it take for the policy to actually, for people to actually kick into the policy? Then how long does it now take for you to see results of the policy? One of the reasons why Donald Trump is pushing as fast as he can is because he understands he only has 4 years. If he had longer than 4 years, he will make some of these drastic moves he's making right now.
Even if we say, okay, maybe it's not 8 years. I like what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense for a country that actually works. Even if we say, okay, not 8 years, let's say 16 years. But it can't be forever. There has to be a limit.
I want to quickly add something. The skepticism is valid, but passing a bill does not necessarily, in fact, worst case, if you're doing your job and you're doing what you're supposed to do there, in 2 years, that's worst case. You should know if this is going to stand or not.
I believe in solution more than I do in problems. I believe in being the change we seek. It's what inspires me to wake up and push every single day. Right, my G?
You sound like a kindred spirit. It's time to talk about transforming perspectives. One of the biggest challenges in Nigeria is not just poverty, unemployment, or corruption. It's our mindset. Over the years, many Nigerians have been conditioned to normalize mediocrity, seek shortcuts, and distrust our institutions. If we want to build a progressive and better Nigeria, we must change the way we think. I call this mindset rehabilitation. Mindset rehabilitation is a structured effort to reshape how we, the citizens, perceive success, leadership, personal responsibility, and community development. It is about replacing limiting mentality with one that values hard work, integrity, innovation, and collective progress. Some ways we can achieve these are, first, education and mentorship. Second, perhaps most importantly, through the media, TV, radio, social media. These are the most important tools to reframe narratives and promote critical thinking. An example of a mindset rehabilitation is from connection before competence to excellence before opportunity. In many parts of Nigeria, especially among our youth, there's a popular belief that success comes from who you know rather than what you know. This mindset leads to people neglecting personal development, skills acquisition, or even formal education, hoping instead for a powerful connection or a link to open doors. Mindset rehabilitation would address this by creating a media campaign called Earn It Right, where young people share stories of how they succeeded through hard work, skills, and persistence, not favoritism. Key components: TV documentaries highlighting everyday Nigerians who built successful careers from the scratch. Social media challenges, encouraging youth to share what they are doing to build their future. For example, my hustle story. The result: over time, the community will begin to shift from idealizing connection to celebrating competence. Young people become more intentional about self-improvement and contributing value, believing that their skills can open doors without needing to know someone. Mindset rehabilitation isn't a quick fix. It's a long-term movement that requires consistent effort, and everyone has a role to play. We can shift the narrative and inspire a new generation of Nigerians who believe in excellence, integrity, and sustainable progress. Together, we can transform mindsets and ultimately transform Nigeria.
This is absolutely remarkable, and I think it is one of the most important things when it comes to what we want to achieve as a country. My entire company at Great Africa is built on this: changing mindset, getting skills to be more fun and more exciting, and getting young people to see the value in skills. But over time, I've spent almost 15 years doing this work, and I've come to realize that it is not the content, it is the system. I'll explain. Social media plays one of the most significant role in our lives today, whether we like it or not. This station, News Central, I don't know how many followers we have, this station has on Instagram, but there are individuals on Instagram that has more followers than this entire station. I mean, if they post something, it has more views, it has more impact than this whole show that we spend a lot of money shooting with all this camera, all this crew. They just need a ring light and a phone. It's simple. But the key problem is, at the end of the day, the system drives how far the content goes. The algorithm is designed to elevate content that is exciting. I can also understand that social media is for people, for the consumers, is a place where people go and just want to relax. I've gone through all the stress. I'm about to eat something, so I just want to screw and enjoy myself. I want to watch a dance video. When I see something serious, I beg, my brain not ready for this one. Next, right? I understand that culture, but at the same time, there are systems that could be enforced to change it. So you go to China today and you check their TikTok. What you see, what they elevate, what the algorithm elevates are things that are creative, skills, industrialization, manufacturing. Last week, they just made it compulsory for 6-year-olds to learn AI in every primary school in China, because they understand that it's not the people, it's the system. When the system is in place, everything works out. Now, I mean, we have a social media bill. I don't know what the content is, but most things I've heard about social media bill so far is every blogger that wants to blog must have an office in Abuja. Like, bro, are you kidding me right now? Like, that's the problem? That is really the problem, because why? It's more like corruption fighting back. Okay, if you blog, at least know your office, so I'll come and find you. Why aren't we calling all the tech bros, the guys that own the TikTok, the guys that own Instagram, to come to the house and explain to us what they're using our data to do?
Mindset rehabilitation is fantastic. I mean, look at what you've said here, to reshape how we, these citizens, not our leaders, perceive success, leadership, personal responsibility, and community development. Last week at the table, I talked about imagination re-engineering. So we're getting there. All of us are waking up to say, look, we have to do things differently to get different results. Two things I like about, I like that you're asking that we prioritize the media as cultural forms that can change the narrative. That is spot on. But more importantly, I like the binaries that you gave here, that we move from connection before competence to excellence before opportunity. That is striking because we're struggling with these in Nigeria. Secondly, I like what you've said about documentaries. You said TV documentaries highlighting everyday Nigerians who build successful careers from the scratch, and you said this should be a major component. That jumps at me. Why? Because at the last documentary festival earlier this month, I heard Femi Odugbemi describe documentary as the manufacture of empathy.
So the algorithm, right? You mentioned something even while you were speaking, which then speaks to what exactly happens with the algorithm. When you're tired, you go online. You are not interested in a lot of, you just want to laugh, right? And that's the one you engage. You see the serious one, you swipe. And that is where the problem is. The algorithm works in a way that for Instagram, for example, even YouTube, when a content is posted, what happens between the first 5 minutes of that content being posted is what will determine how far that content will go, which comes with likes, shares, comments. If one person likes, it increases the visibility of how that is shared to other people. So if I see a content, which is why I personally deliberately try to like contents that are educational, right? If I see it and I like it, more people will see it. If I comment on it, it increases the chances of more people seeing it. However, even our government, like you said, can step in to actually ensure that certain contents are then deliberately pushed, but that would then become a higher level of collaboration with the owners of this platform. Because the China you mentioned, for Asia, for example, there's a content on Netflix. I can't remember the name now, but it's a reality show for content creators. Trust me. The ridiculous things that they do, and those are the people with the highest views on their own social media. Totally ridiculous for entertainment, and they're getting the view. I was watching this, I'm like, I thought Nigerians are mad. Things are happening in these countries, right? But there are bodies, there are people who have taken it upon themselves to ensure that they promote these things that would cause a mindset change, that will promote technology, that will ensure that things get better, right? So we need to get to that point. But those algorithms, we are the ones that are actually enabling what is sharing. Because if I come now and change the kind of content here on my page, you will see views. A friend of mine, who I like to call an uncle, would say there is a danger in what we have here, which is a lot of untold stories and incomplete stories when it comes to our rich people and millionaires, right? There's almost no one you'll be able to call now, and we can tell you this is where they started from, and this is how they got to this place, right? Because they have also refused to tell their stories. A New Central will call you now, it has to be a fanfare before, I don't want to mention anybody's name, before they would think, okay, it's like they are what having me on this show. There is no podcast in Nigeria now that would probably be able to have any billionaire or millionaire, because they will feel like you're not worth it, right? But one podcast in the US, they will be there. So when they're displaying their wealth, you're wondering, how did that happen? What you're hearing is not correlating, and people begin to just take whatever they can do to just move forward.
Maybe the reason they're not telling their stories because they can't
it's not clean.
They can actually support their.
That's why I said they can edit it.
Exactly.
And their stories are disjointed, and when you research it and you investigate it, you actually find out that a lot of what you're saying is lamba. But
please define lamba for other African countries.
Lamba is a made-up story, which is a lie. You know, just to take it from where you stopped, during the week, I put out a post talking about doing documentary on the journey of the Pentecostal faith, and I mentioned quite a few people that, coming from Pastor Babalola to Benson Idaosa to the disruption of Pastor Tunde Jordan. And it shocked me that a lot of people were actually asking,
who is Tunde Jordan? How did I know?
And I was like, wow. It's so interesting because people do understand that our experience of Pentecostalism right now is actually disrupted and as the foundation from Tunde Jordan's work. But then that's it. People don't tell stories. People don't know anything. And that's why we have to go back to telling those stories and telling them very well. I like the way you ended, and I'll just end with this. mindset rehabilitation is not a quick fix.
It is not.
It is a long-term movement that requires consistent effort, and everybody has a role to play.
We can do it. Yes, we can. After all, this is the spirit behind the mantra, power to the people.
I hear you, Kingsley, but surely we must survive before we even speak of where our minds are at. Permit me to start my advocacy today by quoting the late General Sani Abacha. Any insurgency that lasts more than 24 hours, a government official has a hand in it. I'll add that any unrest or corruption that becomes a culture in a country has the full support and blessing of the government. The level of insecurity in Nigeria deserves a state of emergency. Kidnapping, or should I say the business of kidnapping, has grown into a booming unofficial industry. In December 2024, the National Bureau of Statistics told us that Nigerians paid 2.2 trillion naira in ransom between May 2023 and April 2024, a confirmation of what we already live with every day. You don't understand how scary this is until it hits close to home. I remember clearly when a documentary filmmaker and VR creator, also a friend, was abducted in Ibafo, Mowe in 2016. That was the first time it felt real. Since then, it's been story after story, north to south, of people snatched from their homes, roads, offices. Some make it back, some don't, even after paying. In February 2025, retired Brigadier General Tsiga was kidnapped in his own home and spent 56 days in captivity. But what shook me was the note of appreciation published after his release. The ransom demand reached 400 million naira, and a WhatsApp group called Tsiga was created. Over 300 people contributed, including 7 military officers. So I ask, if a general is this unsafe, what happens to the rest of us? Are we on our own? Should we start running? Despite the government's insistence on linking phone numbers to NINs, that's the National Identification Number, in the name of national security, the kidnappers keep calling. They negotiate and arrange drop-offs. However, the same lines these criminals use remain untraceable. How? Are they invisible? 2.2 trillion was paid, yet we don't even have a working identity system. Under Nigeria's law, paying ransom is a crime punishable by 15 years imprisonment. So will they arrest the contributors of the Tsiga group now? This isn't about fear anymore. It's about failure, a failure of leadership, a failure of consequences, and a failure of the system.
You said something that really touched me, and I'll tell you why. You said, you don't understand how scary this is until it hits home. So when you said that, the first thing that came to my mind was when I got picked up by SARS. Because honestly, before I got picked up by SARS, the only thing you see is, SARS online, SARS harassing young men, this, that. But, you know, I'm a young guy that every other day I'm on a t-shirt and jeans or pants, regular with my cap and everything. And I'm walking down the street and I see this young man that comes to hold me by the pants. I was in Lagos, I stay in Abuja. I was in Lagos, he holds me by the pants. And I'm like, what did they happen now? I'm like, why they hold me? Next thing, before I could say Jack Robinson, like 5 other men with guns, all of them with guns, approached me. At that point, I thought I was being kidnapped. I said, God, help me. Yo, you know the crazy thing is, as I was screaming, help me, there were people around, because this was a busy junction. There were people around, but nobody even moved. Before I could say Jack Robinson, trust me, they had put me inside this small bus. Put handcuffs on me. See the beating that came after.
Wow.
Oh my God. The beating that came after was, the last time I was beat like that probably was in high school or somewhere. I was in boarding house, you know. The beating that came after, at that point, if you told me I committed a crime, I probably would have been, yes, Nami Duamo. Nami Duamo. You know, so the truth is, you never really know how scary this thing is until you hit home. I always thought that kind of stuff was far away from me, you know, how would SARS pick me up? I don't even stay in Lagos, like in Abuja, they respect everybody, but you can get kidnapped anywhere, even anywhere in Nigeria. because, well, you give the security agencies some kudos. I mean, they're playing a huge role in, because I know someone that was kidnapped, someone that's very close to me that was kidnapped, and it was actually the police that helped him that day. They literally picked him up from his office in Lagos, and they were driving with him. They wore army uniform, and they were driving with him, and they got to a checkpoint, police checkpoint, and the man started screaming, "Kidnappers, kidnappers, kidnappers!" So the guys inside said, "No, we're taking him to the barracks." They asked us to bring him. So the police said, which was brilliant, the police said, "Okay, if you're taking him to the barracks, let us drive with you. Let him come down." Immediately the guy got down from the car. They took off.
I mean, listening to your story was shocking and scary. Because I found myself wondering as well. My younger brother looks like you. Hardworking, progressive young man with a family. I find myself thinking sometimes, what if he's just picked up by the police doing his legit business? Two things I want to bring out of your advocacy, Elsie, is the perplexity of the kidnapping phenomenon in Nigeria, and the perplexity of the realization that this is an industry. I pan back to your advocacy. You said, despite the government's insistence on linking your NIN in the name of national security, the kidnappers keep calling people. And then you say they negotiate and arrange drop-offs. They are not picked up. However, the same lines these criminals use remain untraceable. How come? And then you ask, are they invisible? 2.2 trillion was paid, yet we don't even have a working identity system. Is it the judiciary we should be asking? Is it the legislature? Is it the executive? You seem to think there's a complicity in this matter, such that kidnapping has become a thriving enterprise in Nigeria. People know who kidnappers are. Their wives buy new wrappers in the market. Their wives inadvertently even talk about the new business their husbands get involved in. We see some of these things on social media, but we don't see a trajectory from the government showing that they're working on this responsibly. We don't see scapegoats. We see instead a rehabilitation of terrorists. It's such a shame, and it's really indeed perplexing.
So it's scary. And you talk about the numbers. Our financial system in 2003, the profit was 2.6 trillion. The entire bank made 2.6 trillion. Kidnapping made 2.2 trillion. I mean, it's a lucrative business.
It is an industry.
It's an industry now, right? And why does this exist? It's because nobody is paying attention. We live in a society that elevates corruption. People who come, the billionaire, my billionaire friend, Odogu 101. You don't ask people, what do they do for a living?
Your source.
What is the structure? What's the source of their income? Nobody cares. What we care about is, they built a church and they built a school. Let's live. Nobody's asking. Parents are not even asking their kids, what do you do? That's the society that we live in now. And then you look, and when it comes to like the possibility of solving this, like you said, the police are doing amazing. They're trying their best, even with the fact that they're not being paid well. But when you know that at the end of the day, you're going to be publicly shamed, you're going to end up on TV. When we create systems that make people understand the repercussion of doing things like this, what happens? It ends. People start getting scared. Like, these are young people who feel like nothing can happen, nothing will happen to us. Let's go ahead and do it. What's the worst that can happen? And they'll talk about poverty. When people know that they don't have a source of living, and they literally where they are, now die they day. And I say, okay, last we'll still die, let's just go.
What
do I have to lose?
I would just wrap up everything we've said, on where Elsie ended, that it's a failure of leadership.
Yes.
Whichever way you're looking at it, I'm wondering whether that 2.2 trillion was part of our GDP for
NBS
that.
will answer that.
I don't know. Maybe it's possible, but it's a failure of leadership at all levels. At this table, we had an advocacy where we talked about people's NIN slip being bought off the internet. There was this investigation that was supposed to then, come out and give us what happened. We're going almost a year now. We have no report about what's going on, why people's NIN could be shopped online. So the reality really, which every Nigerian must know, is that your data is swimming out there. And there are those who are not in the system, who are not authorized, who can have access to it.
There's actually a code you can dial on your phone to ensure that you are the only one linked to your NIN. So please look out for that code. Search social media, you find it. It's important so that you're not picked up as a kidnapper from your humble abode because somebody is using your name to perpetrate something else online.
I'd like to hear from you how you resolved that conflict with the police.
I did a live video for like 5 seconds, and my cousin saw the video. So my cousin lives in Lagos, and he's like, oh shoot, they picked Kingsley up. Then he calls my dad, and next thing, we start to make phone calls, like, oh, where's Kingsley, where's Kingsley? Everybody's waiting for me. My dad has sent like so many guys there. We have like all these people, what's going on? Asking everybody. So everybody's waiting, that's him over there, and everybody's smiling. I mean, I'm smiling with them, but at that point, I already have like bruises all over my face, my hand, my head. But it's part of life. The most important thing I picked from it was, our system is messed up. We as Nigerians have to work towards fixing it.
We must stop being afraid and begin to call out the failure that is dysfunctional Nigeria. That way, at least we're adding our voice to the demand for change. Join us same time next week and lend your voice to the critical conversations at the table. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us.
Peace.
To the Middle East.
In the Middle East.